It's mad, isn't it?
You got to make a play for him. You've got to.
Or is
Why
that
not?
time gone now?
I don't think it's gone, no.
No. Look at England's player profile appetite. Like, imagine you put that with Shawn. Oh my goodness.
So the 2025 Men's Six Nations is done. France are the champions, and welcome to Rugby Union Weekly. It's the big review of the Six Nations, joined by Sam Warburton, John Barclay. How are you both?
Fantastic. Why are you laughing?
Warbs?
I wasn't singing Wheels on the Bus when I was going home today.
Wheels have come off the bus, mate.
Wheels come off the bus.
There is no bus.
There is no bus, mate.
No, we'll dive into that later. But it won what we want, won what I wanted, but has given us plenty of talking points, so still interesting nevertheless.
Yeah, some day on Saturday. What a day.
It's going to be one of them, isn't it?
Oh, it's going to be one of them. Okay, we're going to speak about overs and underachievers. We'll start with Wales. Just one quick sentence before we get into the analysis of it all.
What, the over under? Probably, I'd say under, because I expect them to get one win. I thought they could have snuck a win. I think the Italy game was going to be the one which everyone looked at. That went astray, and then I think they were going to always be scraping for a win after that point. So probably underachieved just. They're going to be bottom two, weren't they? So probably just underachieved.
Yeah, back-to-back wooden spoons, not ideal for Wales. Italy.
Underachieve, maybe? Don't know, I expected a bit more from them. You see them competitive and, compete against Ireland, but then blown away in a couple of games. Completely blown away by France, blown away by England, blown away by Scotland in the first half. So kind of expect a little bit more.
Scotland. John?
Underachieved. You'll say, though. You always say, what do you expect? But
No.
Well, they have. In terms of where they've been, everyone said, how do they get up the table? They went down the table. They've gone down in wins. Less convincing than they have been for a while, I think.
Okay. Ireland.
Definitely underachieved. I thought they were likely to be top two, weren't they? People probably thought it was going to go like France or Ireland, then England. So England have pipped them for that. So I'd say Ireland probably underachieved slightly.
England?
Based on the autumn, probably overachieved. Based on where they should be year on year, probably where they deserve to be.
Based on how they performed over the last 12, 24 months, overachieved. Based on what we expect and what we see in the Prem, their player pool should be that's about right. So that's why it's a bit of both. Isn't it?
I think they're where they should be.
Yeah.
Because it moves us on to France. They were everyone's favourites coming into it. They obviously had that massive hiccup at the Allianz. So are they where we all expected them to be?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. I didn't expect a Grand Slam this tournament. I thought who did I predict? I think it was France. But nobody's going to get a Grand Slam. And I think it just shows, everyone thought Ireland were going to get three in a row. No one's done it before for a reason. Flipping heck, three in a row. That is hard to do. So, not surprised how it's worked out. There's always going to be, not really an upset, but there's going to be a loss in there somewhere. So I think it probably panned out. We thought it was going to be at the top.
Well, Shawn Edwards, their defence coach, says defence wins championships, and he's right again. Said it earlier on Rugby Special, over 50 major titles as a player and a coach. But are we talking about the greatest coach in Six Nations history?
Hard to look past them, isn't it? France the best defence again in the championship. Another title. I mean, you worked them, Sam. Everyone you speak to about him, there's never bad stories.
I remember, I don't know, I just thought of a random anecdote, and this is before he did what he did with France. I don't think someone questioned him because nobody would dare question Shawn in a meeting, but maybe you got a sense that somebody might have questioned him. And he was like, and at the time, so what, he would have won 2012, 2013, he would have won 3 titles with Wales, and then he won the Premiership with Wasps and Europe. And I remember he was like, this system has won Premiership titles, European titles, and 3 Six Nations titles. He's like, it works, lad. And I know you think, fair play, it does. And he's gone to France and he's done it again. So it's like, that's 3 different teams he's gone to and been successful. So there's a common denominator there, and it is Shawn, isn't it? So particularly his all defence is based on physicality, but if any team's going to deliver that, you're looking at a France and England, South Africa. He's gone to his teams and he's transformed them. France got the appetite to defend like they've always attacked, and that's their biggest transformation since Shawn has come in. So I did a pod with Danny. I was reminded by Hixie, our producer, and I ranked him as our greatest coach then of the Six Nations, Six Nations greatest coach, and now he's added another title to that just to probably further extend that lead. So pretty hard to argue against Shawn being one of, if not the greatest Six Nations coach.
There'll be England fans listening to this podcast thinking he's won titles with Wales, he's won titles with France,
And he's got an England tattoo on his arm.
and he's never been able to coach England.
Yeah.
It's mad, isn't it?
You got to make a play for him. You got to.
Or is
Why
that
not?
time gone now?
I don't think it's gone. No.
No. Look at England's player profile and appetite. Like, imagine you put that with Shawn. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but there's still question marks about England's defence.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
Despite
for
that,
sure.
so you imagine him there. And you talk about clarity, and I think you look at England's defence, and we spoke about it in Rugby Special, like unbelievable on the floor, but so much opportunity for attacks to actually expose them that I think their back row saved them. Imagine when I watch a team that Shawn Edwards coach, they look like they know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
Imagine him coaching that defence.
Why do you think? What makes you think that ship might have sailed?
He's got a long-term contract with France. They want him there to 27. We're a couple of years away from that. He's brought success. He's brought him 2 titles, including a Grand Slam. I mean, you look at his role, his honours list. Grand Slam wins in 2008, 2012. He's won it in 2019, plus title 2013, and he won a Grand Slam in 2022. So wherever he goes, success follows him. Why would France let him go?
I know.
Why would he?
It's only if he wanted to.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
only point,
He's
isn't it?
settled here. I've spoken to Shawn. I mean, I've worked with Shawn. He's a brilliant guy. Is it a case that he's never been offered it, or he's never wanted to do it? He's always wanted to coach England. He's
Of course you
always
would.
wanted
Proud
to do
man.
it.
Proud
Of course.
English.
There's a bit of timing involved, though, isn't there? For any coaching thing, like timing is key.
Time and opportunity. And when he left the domestic game for Wales, that was brilliant. And that cartel of Warren Gatland, Shawn Edwards, as well as Rob Howley, they had success at Wasps. They brought it to Wales, and they weren't going anywhere. It was at that point where that band broke up. I thought, we have to make a play. Have to make a play. And then France snapped him up, and it's something that's so untypically French because they only have French coaches coaching the French team. But to bring in Shawn and then to see it deliver a Grand Slam, you didn't need any more evidence, but there was more evidence further still. I would love to see him coach England.
I remember when he got the France job, and everyone's sort of saying, I don't know how this is going to work out here. He's the most un-French man there is.
Yeah,
He is, isn't he?
that's why it worked out.
Yeah, but he's coming. He's going to upset the French lads. They're not going to, stick to what he's asked them to do. I think that in itself is the most remarkable thing. Yeah, cross culture, cross teams, going makes no difference. At the start could barely speak French. Maybe he still can't speak a lot of French. Do you know what I mean? And he still gets his message across.
Yeah,
It can
Clearly.
happen.
yeah.
It could happen, right? It's not. We're sort of all thinking, there's this barrier between Shawn, and we have to wait until he's within 3 months of his contract until you're legally allowed to speak. Look, it's not that. He just dropped a message. There's 1 degree of separation. Like, I'm sure there's loads of people in the RFU who just see Shawn, mate, just off the record. When your contract's up, we'd love to have you. Would you entertain a conversation? Yes or no? Like, completely confidential. It's not hard to find out. Like, though, you can get those wheels in motion now. Just because the World Cup's 2.5 years away, 2 years away, his contract expires 2.5 years. It would be, wouldn't it? Could it be November time? 2 years November. But if you really want to make a play like that, we know. Look, we've been doing this now for like 5-6 years together since we retired. Like 2 years is nothing.
Yeah.
Like that is nothing. So yeah, if you want to be proactive, that should be initiated now.
Yeah, I think so. We'll stick with France because the player of the tournament's not been announced yet, but I'd imagine it's Louis Bielle-Biarrey. Your favourite.
What'd you say?
I got it right.
You got it
John,
well.
go for it.
It was Bielle-Biarrey. That's what you said, isn't it?
He's calling Louis Barry over there. It's not Barry.
He's been watching the in-betweeners. Bielle-Biarrey. Bielle-Biarrey.
But he's quick, he's special. I mean, he's
Flipping heck, he can do it all.
He can do it all. 100-year record. He was able to equal this Six Nations. 8 tries, the most in the tournament, was unbelievable. Scored against every Six Nations team, and feels like there's a real shift. And a land of giants, which we often speak about, France, and he's that juxtaposition in France, isn't he? Because they're built on big men, physicality, and power. He's none of those things to look at. Diminutive character, but they do say dynamite comes in sticks. He creates magic, but he's not just the try scorer. His all-round game is absolutely sensational.
Yeah. We focused on some of his defensive clips, and he's got the attacking game of Louis Bielle-Biarrey. Just that ability to put the ball on his foot, kick, chase, offload, score tries from nowhere. Reminds you a lot of Louis Bielle-Biarrey. But then we saw how good he is aerially, and then even just coming off his line from a defensive perspective. Really brave and decisive in defence, which it sounds easy, but as a winger, it must be a difficult position. You know more than me. You got a 50-50 call to make. Do I stand off or do I just go all out and just go man and ball? And we've seen so many wingers try and go man and ball and they completely mistime it. But he did a brilliant example and caught it on Finn Russell. And you said the good point, and that's a guy with quick hands as well. If anyone's going to get away, it's Finn. And he just dominated him and made a really good read in what would have been a sticky situation if he sat off. So that takes experience to be able to make that call. He's obviously learned quickly. He's obviously very coachable. And in a sort of era where wingers seem to be getting very powerful, you look at a Duan van der Merwe, even a Low Freeman, it's nice to see the slight guy still being able to dominate, and still be one of the world's best players and still so young. So what a player.
We know how rapid he is, and I've got to say, just on defence, we touched on Shawn Edwards, but I never had a greater sense of clarity defending when Shawn Edwards coached me. I thought, and I worked in a blitz defence at Harlequins, and then I went and worked to the Lions with Shawn, and everything I thought was blitz wasn't blitz. He just wanted more. He wanted more pace, more intensity, more commitment to the front line. And I think when you have repetition of that message in terms of just worry about getting up, getting wide, and getting off the line, makes it so simplistic because I'm just a front line defender now. And so when you see Louis Bielle-Biarrey, he steps in and he makes those hits. Yes, of course, it takes a good sense of vision and you've got to make a good read, but it all comes from a backlog of get up and just make hits. Because I think in defence, especially when you can be exposed out on the wing, you either give time to players, but if you give time to players, especially skilled players like a Finn Russell, they make you look silly. But if you take away their time and their space, they can make bad decisions. And it's you actually being the protagonist. It's you being the instigator rather than waiting for something to happen. So I think all of that, the perfect coaching from Shawn, as well as his enthusiasm. And I often say it to you guys, players get better at things that they value. And he obviously values defence. He values chasing kicks. He values getting up in the air and winning all of that. And that's why I think he's such a well-rounded player. And then you've got the try-scoring ability. No one, not a single winger on the planet, as we discussed earlier, has a better strike rate than Louis Bielle-Biarrey.
I think to have Shawn in his corner is massive for him because Shawn would probably see the attacking prowess. He wouldn't have been that defensively able 2-3 years ago, I bet he did have an appetite for aerial balls and defensive work 3 years ago. But Shawn would have pulled him aside and go, look, if you want to be an international top-class player, you have to value this. You have to. And he'd call him out on it and, in training one-to-one, he'd be working with him on it. But I always remember Shawn would say, if I'm picking you up on something, it's because I believe I can make you even better and I care for you and I want you to start on my team. It's the moment I stop talking to you is when you've got to worry because I think you're a lost cause and I just don't think I can improve and I don't want to pick you. So he's probably explain that to the French lads and you've seen Bielle-Biarrey and been like, look, mate, you have to value this because it'll turn you into this player. And I think we're seeing the fruits of that labour. So I think he's probably, I know we've moved off from Shawn now, but I wouldn't underestimate the influence Shawn would have had on him because all those things that we're talking about, which a lot of back three players don't value, don't value. And I see them, I'm like, but there's certain players I don't think they'll play for the Lions. Someone's like, why is that? I'm like, well, they might score a try, but they dropped 3 eyeballs and they missed 3 tackles.
All the value of his game.
I think they had a wicked game.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why I think he's so much better, not so much better of a player, but his teammate at Bordeaux is Damien Panot. And his highlights reel is insane. But my biggest difference between the two of them is that Bielle-Biarrey, he is so engaged and so intentional every moment, where Panot, we watched him against France where he just jogs back. He gets out of jail. He was lucky. But he was lucky. Bielle-Biarrey does not put himself. It doesn't leave anything to chance. He races through everything, picks up crumbs, and he stays in every moment of every game. And I think when you've got a player like that, mentally just switched on as well as physically world class, you get a player like him.
Yeah, all the stuff like that try gets scored against Ireland, we grubbers it around the outside, and the wheels to go around and score is crazy. But there's actually the stuff you're chatting about. There's nothing about that. You do kind of expect that from him. It's the stuff, the added stuff, and the added levels of his game around kick, chase, aerial stuff, his defensive reads. He's one of the best wingers in world rugby at the moment.
Has to be. Only one team beat France though. It was England.
You're right.
Don't look at John now. Spewing.
Insert tumbleweed.
Yeah.
It was England. They came second, and what a way to sign off at the Principality. I mean, We were all there. You guys were working on telly for the BBC. I mean, Sam, I've got to come to you first, but how impressed were you with that England performance?
Not at the not to the detriment of Wales, but I was actually really pleased to see England do that, because I've been quite positive with England. Like I predict a lot of wins with games, and people are like, really? And then they might lose it. And I'm like, yeah, but I can see, like, when Borthwick talks about the potential of this team, they could be really good. Like I see that. I can really see it. Like the sort of age profile, the skill level, the nice mix between power and handling ability in their backs, and the forward pack that they got to pick from, and the depth as well. Like, importantly, the depth they've got in their selection. They should be so good. I just think they got their players who play week in, week out in the Prem are outstanding. Like, it's sort of, you thought, like, is it a little bit of like a England football back in the noughties when, like, you assemble all these great players, they don't quite click. And like, but the last 2 weekends, and then 3 weekends, it's like it's clicking. And England can hit physical heights that maybe only France or South Africa can hit. They brought it for maybe 40-50 minutes against Ireland and didn't maintain that. The Irish bench come on and did really well. You remember in round one, and Borthwick did say, like, look, it was inexperienced bench, and he hasn't picked an inexperienced bench since. He's picked a bench since which have added real value to the game, and maybe that's a bit of a learning for Steve. Like, he probably won't admit it, but he's like, oh, I won't pick that kind of bench again against such a good team. So I think the selection since, the coach is always learning. You're always learning, and England seem to have learned from rounds 1 and 2, and then we're judging them off like the last sort of 3 games. Then England fans got a lot to be excited about with. Okay, I know there's a Lions tour before, but looking at a World Cup in 2 years' time, I'm just thinking now, who's not going to be there? Maybe Daly, maybe George. Everyone else should be there. Everyone else should be there. So you should be very excited as an England fan. And the 20s got loads coming through. Like, imagine another 2 years of like a Poku Vajor or Fasogbon, props. Like, there's loads of guys who another 2 years could be a lot more front 5 players that maybe a lot of fans haven't heard, but in 2 years' time, like a Pollock now, a lot of people won't know Pollock 6 months ago. They all know him now. That's going to happen again because they've got a lot of good 20s boys coming through.
Yeah, age profile is looking brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, and I look at the you can understand the pressure on them after the autumn, and round one, and the kind of pressure that was getting put on them, and I think that was reflective in the first couple of games. I think they looked quite nervous, looked quite cagey, they looked a bit clunky with the ball in hand. That game against Wales is the most clinical I've seen them in years. They look like a team playing with freedom, with confidence. And Wales were very, very poor. But you can play what's in front of you. And they rolled them. They were physical. They hammered them at the breakdown. Like, not very many handling errors. Yeah, I'm with Sam. I think you look at the age profile, the guys coming through, it's pretty terrifying.
John, I agree with you. That was the most clinical performance I've seen from England since the 2019 World Cup against New Zealand.
Yeah.
I was so impressed across a number of different ways, and it was all built upon, I thought, a positive mindset to attack. And we saw this last year. We chatted about it yesterday. I remember it's almost carbon copy. In the first 3 rounds of last year's Six Nations, which ended up in a miserable defeat at Murrayfield, they then went to York, had their fallow week, and said, we need to do more ball in hand. And then they beat Ireland at home, and then they played brilliantly well against France away. And the same formats happened this year round. It was question mark after question mark in the first 3 rounds, went to York. I mean, maybe they just train at York every week. But they fostered a belief of attack, scored some brilliant tries, 7 tries against Italy, and then 10 tries away at the Principality. My challenge to this side is now to not regress or take your foot off the pedal in terms of that mental approach, because it's the same players, same coaching staff. So the skill set hasn't changed. The mentality shifted. And I think we've seen them get closer to their potential over the last couple of weeks than what we saw in the previous 3. They were brilliant. Finn Smith, I thought, played really well. His line kicking, and I know it's something that perhaps gets overlooked, but first penalty goes to the corner, brilliant line out drill, Marrow scores. And then they brought a ruthless edge. I mean, they'd not scored more than 4 tries at the Principality since 2001, and then inflicted 10 at the Principality. The clock went to 80. They're like, no, we're playing. We're playing. This is a moment. This is a game which we'll remember forever.
Compared to the first couple of rounds, how many aimless kicks after 2 or 3 phases did we see from England against Wales and against Italy compared to the first 3 rounds? And we're all here going, keep the ball in hand, because you've got some of the best players in the championship ball in hand. And I said in a piece before the game, I was like, Wales got to take England into multi-phase when Wales are defending, England are attacking, because they just very impatient with the ball in hand. But I've always wanted to see England be more patient, you know. But England almost were like first attack and set, kept the ball, multi-phase. Wales were offside because England were just dominating them, so they just caught them offside. Kick to the corner, drive maul, try. Brilliant. They get 5 minutes later, scrum penalty, kick to the corner, drive, dominate first two collisions, score out wide. It's like that's what they should be doing, like more regular. And it's almost like it's taken them maybe a few weeks to figure that out. But like the amount of times that we see them go 1, 2, 3 phases, if it's like a purposeful kick, then it would be aimless kick, wouldn't it? Like, oh damn it, we're out of shape, out of ideas. Let's just stick it through and see if something comes from it. But like, it wasn't that. They actually trusted themselves, ball in hand. No, you know what? We're more we're physically superior. Keep the ball in hand. Let's go 6 to 10 phases and wait until they give an infringement at a ruck or they come offside or something like that. They all make an error before us because we're the superior team. And they backed themselves, you know, and they went for that. And Wales didn't have an answer for it. So I was really pleased to see that. And I hope, like to what you're saying, News, they stick to that. Keep the ball in hand. Take teams multi-phase. Because if you do, you're going to earn at least a penalty because they're that physically dominant, you know, and that's against most teams. Maybe only France can match them physically, at least. But they turn France over. They can do it physically. They need to keep the ball in hand more. And they did that last 2 rounds. It was great to see.
Problem solving was great. Lost. I thought it was 2 positions which we can't afford to lose. One was second row because we had no second row replacement. But for 62 minutes, we ran with 1 out and out second row. Not a problem. And then the other one was Tommy Freeman. Not an issue. Ben Earl played there. 48 minutes, he goes to 12. And I thought, sweet, their ability to be able to navigate their way through positions or periods in the game that could take away from their flow. They were unflappable. Their accuracy and their detail. I know it's only small things, but if you do small things consistently well across 80 minutes, you get a complete performance like that. So whether it's kicking to the corner, great length, line out drills, accuracy at the breakdown, your carry, just understanding who you are and what you're about. And the personality that I've seen of this team needs to be their USP. We're an attack-minded team that can blow teams away with our detail, with our accuracy, and with our power. We know we've got finishing ability. Tommy Freeman scored against every Six Nations team. Another record, first Englishman to do it. Absolutely outstanding. So we've got loads of that. And then you can bring like an Ollie Slightholme back in, who never does anything wrong. We've got a Manny Feweboso coming back in. We've got Henry Arundel coming back from Paris. We've got George Furbank, who's probably the starting 15 to come back. We've got players, we've got threats out wide, but up front, and we know we can deliver. Ellis Genge, Will Stewart, outstanding set piece. Maritoji, what a line-out carrier. And then your 2 areas of expertise, the back row.
We watched it, and you watched the game very differently second time round, and we spoke about the back row before the game and how good they've been. And you watch it back, and we joked about I couldn't believe it was all in the same game. But you watch it back, you're like, there can't be another turnover for Tom Curry.
Yeah,
he was
or Ben
doesn't
matter.
Ben Earl
or Ben Earl, yeah, or Cunningham South cleaning people up as well. You're like, mate, their work on the floor at the breakdown, and yeah, Wales were so poor there. They were like the speed, the urgency to the breakdown was pretty lethargic at best. But mate, some of that one line with Tom Curry, there's no right to get that ball. Yeah. There's a couple where you just think, yeah, fine, you got a sloppy clean. Those guys, and we saw it in the stats across the Six Nations, they've been the best in the tournament by a mile for jackals, for slowing ball down, for getting turnovers. And you throw into that what they're doing with the ball in hand as well, those guys.
Yeah.
You got Earl playing centre for 30 minutes. Tom Curry's carrying like a maniac. His brother's doing the exact same. And a bit of subtlety as well that you saw, Maro throwing tip-on passes, Cowan Dickey finding one-on-one collisions because they have the power, but you become even more powerful when you add layers to your game. And that's what Ireland have been so good at. How do you add extra levels? How do you become more powerful just by adding subtleties to your game? But yeah, I thought those guys I think both Curry should go on to Australia in the summer. I really do.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair shout. Ben Curry, he was player of the match. I mean, it was just ridiculous. If they can get a phase play defence as good as their breakdown, for me, that's the missing piece. Their defence hasn't been good enough for the last year. And if they can work on that detail, and every team will look at areas where they can improve. For England, I think it's quite obvious. It's not cost them this Six Nations, but if they can layer that on, then they'll be a pretty decent team.
Do you think they've gone? Because when Felix Jones was there, it felt like they were their DNA as a team was we're a defensive team, and we kick the ball, and we harry and harass, and we create and we're powerful. But it felt like they were very much that was their USP, our defense. Watching that game of the weekend, I'm like, to your point, USP is your attack. Look, you see Mitchell playing like when he's playing for Northampton.
Yeah.
Finn Smith to say, and whether that's because you got those guys who all play together week in, week out, and that's probably the one thing with England, you still probably don't know what their first choice backline is in a number of positions.
9 changes at the weekend.
Yeah, but they had a mindset of attack, and we heard it in before the Scotland game. We're going to be brave with the ball, and then they weren't. But they were brave at the weekend. It's also very easy to be brave when you're playing against a Welsh defence like that.
Just a random one, I thought, because I thought of this player, and he's kind of got under the radar because, like, the back row rightly have stolen the headlines, but the last 2 rounds in particular, how good has Fraser Dingwall been at 12?
Yeah.
He's been very good at 12. I think he come in, and there's always, I've heard you and Chris Jones talk about, people like Dingwall, but has he got that next international step, I still think there's obviously, I'm not saying he's come in and that's the 12 for the next 10 years. But I think he's come in and done an exceptional job at 12. Slotted in really well. There's been another really good pair of hands in that midfield as well. And I think that, rightly, the back row have been phenomenal, and the back 5 in particular have been amazing for England. But just a word on Dingwall I thought I'd mention. I thought he's had a great couple of weeks.
A word of marrow.
He's been brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, he's one of these guys, he's consistently at such a high level. When he's not at that level, people are saying, oh, he's a bit quiet. But he's still like an 8 out of 10 every week. And then I think this championship, as captain, and you look at that game.
Has it made him better?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if it's made it better, but it's not pulled him back at all. That's kind of the thing with Cap. Some people think it's a burden, and he seems to be thriving on it. But yeah, I think he's a player. When I watch, the game revolved around him, and I mean that he's always near the action.
Yeah.
He's always near it, and whether it's Chesham going off, and he's got to call all the lineouts to himself, or not all, a lot of lineouts to himself, figuring that out. His work as a captain with the referees is very good. His ball carrying was improved against Wales. Turnovers, work rate, low error count. Still gave away a few penalties, but yeah, across the championship, like he's best second row of the championship, I reckon.
What's the hardest thing to do as a captain?
Good question, actually, and I know the answer straight away. I've always found the hardest thing, this is where the pressure mounts on a captain. Because I remember I'd be a captain now, and I will answer. I've been a captain. There was very senior players in the same team as myself, and I'd sometimes think they've had a quiet game, but you get away with it. If you're not captain, you have a quiet game, you get away with it. If you're captain and say you're less than a perceived 8 out of 10, then the guillotine comes down and you get a lot of fingers pointing at you. It's that ability to maintain such a high level of performance week in, week out, and any quiet game gets exposed and your position gets challenged, and that's the hardest thing about captaincy. And I've seen people be named captain and players are going, oh, it's not as easy as it looks, because that spotlight is on you way more than when you're not captain. If Mara had a quiet game in rounds 2, 3, and 4, but it was great rounds 1 and 5, you'd be like, oh yeah, Mara was pretty good this tournament, but you don't really question it. You just think, oh, that's just the ebbs and flows of play. And when you're captain, if you have 3 quiet games in a row, he didn't, by the way, but just hypothetically speaking, if you have 3 quiet games in a row, people start saying, should you be captain? And that's a lot of pressure. So being able to deal with that pressure and that constant level of high performance, which you try to achieve anyway, but it gets scrutinised in the public more when you're a captain. I think that's the hardest thing to deal with, maintaining that high level of performance.
Richie McCaw is the best at that. I think you talk about 100 or 50 odd games with just a level of just performance week in, week out. So I'm with Warby. I think I didn't captain nearly as much as you, but if you're in a team and you're talking about how do you drive standards and this is what we're going to do this weekend, and then you don't deliver it on your own performance, and you're like, well, this ain't great.
Yeah, how can you talk if you're not
doing it?
That's
I
what I mean.
think there's much more self-awareness, and the psychological the burden of that is like, well, I'm not playing well. Maybe I'm playing all right, but you feel like you should constantly be one of the best players on the pitch.
Yeah, and I've had times where I've been a captain. I've gone to the coach like, I don't need to be captain next 2 weeks. I just want to go in my own little bubble and just make sure that my cog turns perfectly, because I know it's the best thing for the team. If my cog can turn perfectly and I just deliver my job perfectly as a number 7, then it will benefit the boys. At the minute, there'll be times I feel my form sliding. It sounds the wrong word to use in a team sport, but it's not. You need to do this. I was like, I just need to be selfish for myself and have a perfect week's prep and do everything that I need to do Because I've always said, as a captain, you can have all these traits, but ultimately the number one KPI has to be your performance on the field. That has to be the priority. You've got to show the way as a captain. And if you're struggling from a form perspective, then you've got to make decisions to make sure your form is number one priority and you get that back. And that's why times I've said, no, I don't want the captaincy, because I just knew that the performance was the most important thing. And, doing things like being more conscious around the team preparation in the week and even match days, silly little things like coin tosses or being distracted with all the extracurricular type things you've got to do, sponsorship media, post-match. Like, it's just, sometimes I just want to play the game. I just want to play the game and just be destructive, and sometimes I felt the captaincy got in the way of that. So that's the hardest thing, is it's just making sure you can maintain that performance. And yeah, Mara's done that exceptionally well.
If you're looking for more rugby union on BBC Sounds, then look no further than this one, called Sport's Strangest Crimes. It's hosted by Ross Kemp, and we go all the way back to 2009 and that infamous day where Harlequins took on Leinster in that Bloodgate scandal. Of course, you can download it on BBC Sounds. Okay, Wales, 17 defeats on the spin now, the worst losing streak of any Tier 1 nation. There's no point analysing the game. That's in the bin. But what next for Wales?
So I'll just roll into it. Has to go down to 3 regions. Has to. We haven't got enough good players to have 4 regions. And by the way, this isn't what annoys me is this isn't going to happen, because there's a new professional rugby agreement which is being agreed now, very close to crossing the line, and that's to keep 4 teams. Now, where I will say, I think it comes from a good place with the WRU wanting to keep 4 teams, because they recognise there's been a lot of good work that has been gone on and a lot of money from private investors, because all the regions are privately owned. A lot of private money has gone into those regions over a long time. But I personally think that the new deal just promotes mediocrity. I think you've got to go down to 3 teams, which means you condense the player pool. Rather than spread 24, 25 million across 4 teams, spread it across 3 teams. And you've got to push for a new domestic competition. Fans don't buy into the URC. I've been told to keep quiet on this, and I'm not. We're not good enough to be there yet. We need to get better, but I would personally love an anglo-welsh league. Domestic then would thrive in Wales, and I'll be honest, I don't think England need us right now, to be honest. That's the problem. If Wales were really throwing their weight around at club level, then you've got a strong argument for that. So they've got to get better at club level, and that's why I think this is a way to get there. And then what you'll do is you'll pick 35 lads of what we call PNIs, players of national interest. They play for one of the 3 regions, and then they play for the national team. So you've got 120 players across 3 teams. The other 80 odd players, it's going to be 70 because there's going to be some foreigners, 60 players. The other 60 players, they're dual contracted with the tier below, which is what we call our Super Rugby Cymru. That's our semi-pro team. Everyone from that region is not a player of national interest. When the internationals are on, they go down and they play in that league. So it really brings up the standard in that league. That would be what I would do. And to go down to 3 teams, yep, it's easy to say that. How does that happen? We've got to offer, we don't know, you could present a merger to the West or the East, and they might take it. I don't think they will. And the difficult thing with mergers is that you're asking 2 clubs who are privately owned, those owners, to put a massive amount of trust in each other and say, yeah, I don't know you, but I'm going to merge our club with your club. So I think that's unlikely. It nearly happened with the Ospreys and Scarlets. It nearly happened. Now, I think players need to speak up now. If I spoke up and said, you know what, I'd be proud to represent the East region. I played for East Wales at under 11s, I did. And we played West. I loved it. If you had, like, just hypothetically speaking, when it nearly happened, if John Davis and Alan Wynne-Jones is an Osprey and Jonathan Davis is a Scarlet, said, you know, we're going to be really proud about this. We're representing West. Then fans and stakeholders will get behind them. One is a merger option, and you've got to put that on the table and see if anyone's willing to do that. If not, then you've got to be cutthroat and cut someone. Now, if we're looking at, like, from a commercial perspective, then Clethley are struggling furthest west. They're going to struggle to generate the commercial income that might be needed, but I don't think it should be them, because I think it should be judged on performance on the field and the amount of players who've come through and played for the national team. If you're doing that, then it's blatantly obvious it's the Dragons. Nobody wants to say it, but it's the Dragons. And look, I feel for the Dragons now, right? I've got friends who play for the Dragons, some great players have come from there, and I really like one of the owners there. I think he says a lot of really good stuff. But they perform poorly, consistently the worst Welsh region over the last 20 years, and they produce by considerable amount the fewest players to the national team. And people say, well, that's not fair on them. Look, it wasn't fair on the Celtic Warriors when they went as well, and Pontypridd had to suffer, and Bridgend fans had to suffer. Like, this happens. When people say oh, you're saying actually on the board of Cardiff, you'll always save Cardiff. I'm like, well, no, but Cardiff are doing all right on the field, and they produce quite a lot of players to the national team and British and Irish Lions over the years. Like there's a lot of evidence to suggest Cardiff. If so, I think one of those decisions has to be made, and you're not going to be popular for it. There's always going to be people who don't like you, but I think that you realise when you've been in our position and you play international sport, you never please everyone. Just get used to it. Sometimes you just got to be bold, stick your neck out, and you've got to go for something. And no action is the worst action right now. So nobody really wants to say definitively what needs to happen because they worry that a whole set of fans are going to come at them. Look, it's nothing personal, Dragons fans. I'm just going off evidence. If somebody says, well, let's keep 4, I'm like, well, I've got 20 years of evidence that 4 regions don't work. So something has to change, you know. They say if it's not broken, don't fix it. I'll tell you now it's broken. So we need to try something different, and that's personally, that would be my little manifesto on what I would do.
What do you think the WRU will do?
Stay the same. I think we'll be here in a few years' time and nothing will change.
Because all the stuff you're saying, Warby, is big, and I think you're right. It definitely needs, without knowing enough about the detail behind it, everyone you speak to, and I speak to a lot of people down in Wales saying the exact same stuff. It needs to change. All the feedback given, whether it's ex-players, seems to fall on deaf ears. All the stuff you're saying, it feels like it's going to take a long time to do. What happens? I think my interest is like, what do they do in the next 6 months? What are the immediate questions or things that can be resolved to try and improve Wales?
Yeah, I mean, the reason I don't think it'll happen is because no one from those 4 clubs is just going to roll over and say, oh, you know what, go on, yeah, we'll disband. You know, that's never going to happen. There's too much passion in each club, which is a good thing. There's a lot of people that really care about the game. The only way that would happen is if I believe you've got to serve notice on a team, which would take time. You can't just serve notice on them in 1 month and say you're going to be gone next season, by the way. And people say, well, what about players who lose their jobs? I'm like, this has to be run like a business. We're not a charity. Like it's a high performance business. Like you got to stay in the game. Like you can't be. Sounds bad, but you can't be sympathetic. Like that's pro sport. That's pro sport, mate. Look at football. How they operate. It's ruthless. Yeah. It's ruthless.
American football. You can be in the squad 1 week and then you go on the next week. Here's your bag. See you later.
Yeah,
I agree. Like they did it in Scotland when the Reavers got disbanded. The Borders who struggled, they struggled year on year and year, and they made the decision. And everyone, the fallout was, this isn't fair, and it's not meant to be fair.
Yeah,
it's meant to improve. Yeah, it's meant to improve the nation, improve the union, and. Yeah, I get it. It's an almost impossible situation, but you want to improve.
And it'll only happen, I think, is if I think probably what would be the easiest solution is if, you know, they're probably waiting for one of the teams going to administration. And then you just go, oh, well, we've got 3. Let's just work with 3.
Yeah.
But I don't think anybody wants to make that call. But I think that call has to be made sooner rather than later.
Short term, Wales need to find a head coach and are looking for a director of rugby. Matt Sherratt was asked when he initially took the job. He was like, I'm a caretaker for this at the moment. He's gone back to Cardiff. Is there anyone in your mind who should be taking that national job?
I've thrown a few, you know, names in the ring. I mean, like Easterby's an obvious one. Then you got, I think Danny Wilson has got a very good CV and would be a nice step up for him. Headed up Cardiff. Been at Glasgow, been at Scotland, headed up Quins, understands the country, you know, because he was my academy coach, so knows how the pathway works, knows the politics, knows the regional situation, the WRU history, gets it. So there'd be some sympathy there as well. Or do you get someone from outside? Which I think there would be some, you know, is it Franco Smith? You know,
he seems keen.
Yeah, you know, like those guys, an international job is normally what's going to be next, what they're searching for on that CV. So I think there's like a load of credible guys out there. Even, you know, like, do you need someone really big and strong as a character, like a Michael Checker, Shawn Edwards? Like, I don't think that would happen. But when people say, oh, they don't know, there's loads of options. Yeah. I think the point being is there's a lot of options out there, which would be good.
I just think if you're going to be a national, I don't think the list would be that big. Into who's going to want, of all the stuff you just spoke about, all the stuff that's happening politically in the background that needs fixed. Is a coach going to want to come and do it with all that stuff? Can I just coach, or am I involved in all this other stuff as well?
Which moves me on to the next question, because what you said about Danny Wilson, is he the type, from what you've just said then, is he best suited for a potential director of rugby role?
See, Danny to me, I guess I know him Personally, obviously, he's actually one of my favourite coaches I've had. Superb coach. He's an on the field guy, isn't he? He's
very good. Very hands-on.
He's hands-on. He needs to be amongst the players. Gives good detail. Excellent coach. So I think that DOR. It depends. Is that DOR like what you see at club level, where they're selecting the team, sorting player contracts, or is the DOR more of a strategic role?
What do you think Wales need?
I'll be honest, I don't know. Like, I'm not going to sit here and think I know the answer. Like, we've never had it before, the DOR. Like, Gats didn't have a DOR when things were going well. Do England have a DOR? Do France have a DOR? Like, this to me, like, it feels like we're trying to just, we need that. I'm like,
well, you've got Conor O'Shea, who's kind of in that DOR role within England.
That's strategic then, isn't it? It's not first team.
Totally strategic. I mean, he sits right across the Red Roses, for example. He's got his eyes right across the under-20, so he can feed back to Steve Borthwick, hey, we might lose 10, 11 lads to the lines this summer. This lad and this fella's been playing really well in the under-20s. He could be that next one, not for a cap in the next year, but he's someone that could be on your radar for the 27. So having that cohesion between national coach Steve Borthwick, Conor O'Shea, who's right across it and feeding back, then you're able to accelerate some players like a Henry Pollock. A Henry Arundel's another brilliant example of going well in the under-20s. I mean, Henry Pollock, he started this Six Nations playing for the under-20s, finished it, scoring 2 tries in the men's Six Nations in the national side. And those things don't happen as a coincidence.
You know, like that's if I was going to pick the role, it wouldn't be one that's just going to interfere with like a team selection, like like you have in the Premiership. It would be that strategic role. And I guess
like a Nusafora.
Yeah, the responsibilities would be allocation of players across the regions. Where are all the non-Welsh qualified? Your good foreign imports. Where are they? Making sure they're distributed evenly, so they don't sort of stop anyone from coming through. For example, if there's 2 number 8s already at a region, the other regions can't sign any number 8s. Like you can't block that pathway. You've got to look at really deeply look at what work is going on in the academies, who's coming through, your succession planning. Like that's what the role has got to be. I don't think it's a team selection close to the first team role. It's much more of a strategic role to make sure that the regions are aligned, and the money that is being filtered into the regions is being closely monitored, which it should be. You don't just give pocket money out and to your kids and say, right, off you go, spend it on what you want. You need to monitor what's going on, So I think, whether they have an active role observing the boards at board meetings, so they understand, it's got to be very closely aligned. And that's the role I think that has probably been missing. It wouldn't be, I wouldn't expect them in the team room with the first team too often. They'd obviously have a presence, but they're not like a coach as such. Yeah. It'd be much more strategic.
Okay, well, we've got a Nations pod coming out. Gareth Rees-Owen, Tom English and Chris Jones. I'm sure we'll be very much touching upon that, and the conversation, no doubt, will rumble on for the next few days, weeks and months. John, Scotland, where are they?
Will they finish 4th? So that's not a... Yeah, look, I think there's going to be, you talk about what's going on with Wales and what's going to happen in the coming weeks and months. I think Scotland are getting to that point now where there's a sense of why, is this group capable of pushing on, or is that their ceiling? I personally don't think they're at their ceiling in terms of where they could finish in the table. And I'm saying that because I look at the way they play and look at the way the opportunities they create, in particular against France and against England. You look at the way they're able to impose their game plan on teams, but they can't take that step. And
is it players or coach?
Well, that's the hard thing, because I think they're playing the game in the right areas. They're showing a maturity to how they're doing it. And then they're at the last, it's the same against England, same against France, against 2 of the best sides in the world, blown away against Ireland, which is the really frustrating one. So yeah, I don't know. I think is there a sense that this group's gone as far with its current management around it? I don't know, because I look at it and think, well, the coach's job is to give you the tools and the strategies to go out and I see what Scotland are trying to do. So why are they not doing it? Why are they not taking that step? And I think a bit of it falls down to depth of resources. I think the players that couldn't afford to lose, they lost. And would it have made a difference? Yes, maybe not. I don't know. We'll never know the answer to that question. So I look at the Scott Cummins, Max Williamson, the second row, and Sione Tuipulotu, and I just think would that have made a difference? Would they finish the top 2? Probably not. I still think they're still just that bit below England and Ireland and France. So that there's still that challenge. I just think, how do they progress? I think the British and Irish Lions, I think, and I picked my team, there's good case to say there'll be, the whole backline would go on tour. Maybe Ben White might not. You don't know at 9. But I think you look across that back. So how can you have so many talented players in that backline, you're not getting across the line? Well, then, is it your forwards? And I don't think you can have a team that's lacking, or this team is probably lacking, real world-class talent up front.
It's very hard in today's game to have brilliant backs and not have a stable platform of what Scotland are currently delivering. So I have real sympathy. Massive fan of how they play. Massive fan of the back line. Quite big fan of the front row, actually.
Yeah.
But the back five just can't compete. When you list who Ireland have, when you list who England have, when you list who France have, there is a significant difference between any of them. I think, and we chatted last night, I think Scotland got the best backline in the home nations. But a backline without the oomph, the front foot ball.
But look at us talking about the England back row, and the impact they're having on the game. And Cunningham South and the names. You go to Ireland, you go to France, and you're like,
it's the bench as well.
It's the bench is coming on, and then you asking Xander Fagan to play 80 minutes. Again, it's not just the French pack, the second French pack that comes on. You're going 80, mate. You're going 80.
Bring on Miafu, Cyril Bay, Gelon.
Cheers,
go on, mate. Do 80.
Get some electrolytes into you. You got another 50 to go here. Do you know? I just think that there's like, and I know I'm clearly going to be biased to this. If I'm like as a pure spectator watching that game yesterday, how exciting to watch Scotland play, but they don't take that step, and that's the thing. Like that's the thing that's always thrown back. It's like, well, you are where you've always been.
Yeah,
and it's I don't know what the answer is. I actually don't know. And does it reach a point where you say, well, we've got nothing to lose now, we have to try something else now?
And on that point of trying something else, because lots of whispers about Gregor Townsend's future. We know he's got a contract up until the next World Cup. But because I think people are a little bit lost, because they look at the star quality, they look at a Darcy Graham, a Van der Merwe, a Hugh Jones, Tua Pilotta comes back in, Finn Russell's world class, all the rest of it. They're like, how can we not? And because they can't quite put their finger on it, do you think it's fair that the finger's been pointed at Gregor?
Well, that's the business now, isn't it? That's his job, is to, whatever resources he has given to him, and there's no asterisks on a scorecard at the end of the game, there's no pictures on it. You're not getting the results required. And actually you're getting worse. 2 wins. And that's the matter-of-fact part of this business and the sport. It's like, well, you won 3 last year, 2 this year. You've sat 3 for years now it's 2. World Cup was disappointing. So at what point do you say, and I think equally, at what point does Gregor say, do you know what, I've maybe done all I can here? Because he's a great coach. He's coached the British and Irish Lions. Yep. He's an amazing detailed tact coach. Does he want to go and do something else? I don't know, maybe. Does he want to go coach in France? Does he want to be involved in another home nation? Because I think he's a superb coach.
The one thing, I agree, the one thing I think Scotland can't dip into, which Ireland, England and France can dip into, and like Wales can't do this either. You look at defenders beaten and 9 breaks and 22 entries. Like, and you said this before, Gregor's like, boys, I'm getting you there. Like, we're getting you there, and they're getting plenty of possessions there, and they're managing to break teams. But what they can't do, which those other top 3 teams can do, is, as often enough as these teams, is they can't just go to their maul and rely on 2 maul tries, or they can't just go off 9, just batter off 9 when they're 5 metres out and go over as regular as those two, as like an England displayed or a France displayed. Wales haven't got that in their armoury, and that's an upfront thing. Sometimes you just need that up front. I think Scotland are probably just missing that. You know, if you added a drive maul try to Scotland's game, then but then that requires a pack. You know, that sounds like an easy thing to do. That requires a more dominant pack. So I say the back line's there, but I just think it's not what we're saying really. It's not married up with the pack. And I think you compare their pack to those top 3 teams, they can dip in, they can probably get, even if it's not a maul try, but they're getting, we did a little run on France, just getting points from just sheer physicality, from just sheer ball carrying or maul penalties. I don't think Scotland can draw points out of teams like maybe those top 3 teams can either.
Okay, 6 Nations done. All eyes are on the Lions. Lions captain?
Maro told you.
Doris or Maro, but I think Maro is probably just edging it, given that I think he's more of a shoe in the start.
Okay, we've been selecting our teams every single week across the last 5 rounds. Any Lions bolters? Who was accelerated into Andy Farrell's thoughts and on the plane?
Yeah, my bolter was Blair Murray. People go, what are you on about? I'm like, no, right. It could easily be Kinghorn. Blair Murray's been exceptional, but he's a sort of guy, just imagine, going on tour. I think he's been good enough to get picked to go on tour. I don't think 15 is a position where players have been pulling up trees in the Championship. I think Blair Murray's been great. He's the sort of guy who can go on tour, he'd have 3 warm-up games, be electric, and people are like, guys, Blair Murray he's been good. Like, I can just imagine something like that happening. And I've seen him play. Some people might not understand, but I've watched him play for the Scarlets all season. I'm fortunate that I can get a little bit of intel down there because my brother works down there as a head physio, and like I remember texting about him start the season. He's like, "Mate, Blair Murray is a serious player. What a find! What a find!" So like, I've seen more of him than most people, so I guess I've got a bit of an advantage there. I've seen a lot of him play. I think he's just going to get better and better. That's why I picked him.
Anyone else who's made it from lane 8?
Finn Smith, but just because from the start of the Championship to now, people probably weren't considering him, but I think now he's firmly on that plane. I don't think he's going to start, but I think he showed such a level of control, composure, getting England moving in the right way, getting them attacking. So I'd be surprised if he wasn't. But I don't see any other just out and out bolters. Tom Willis maybe, but because he's not playing for England, would he fall into that bolter category? Probably not. Do you have anyone?
Out of the 10s, I was thinking of Finn Smith. Who misses out then? Out of 10s,
Yeah,
because there's a high-profile 10 going to miss out.
Finn Russell's going. Finn Smith is going. Sam Pendergrass is going.
I reckon.
I know.
So like, would that
Marcus
Smith or Kinghorn then? Isn't it?
See, ordinarily you take 3 10s, but I think Marcus, the way in which I see it, I don't think he starts at 10. I think that's Finn's shirt. But knowing Marcus's versatility, what he can bring off a bench, and we now live in an era where you can go 7-1 or 6-2. Well, if we decide to go 6-2 down in Oz, Marcus is your guy.
Yeah, he is.
You've got a 10 that plays 15, and that very much depends on who is the starting 15. Because if it's Blair Kinghorn, for example, he covers 10 anyway. But I do think it's really, really difficult in an international test match. And Blair Kinghorn's run more meters in this Six Nations than anyone else. Imagine doing that for 15 minutes and go play 10. With those running meters in your legs.
And he hasn't played much 10 lately.
Yeah, he's not yet.
I think that's very difficult. So I do think if you're replacing 10, you're not replacing it with someone who's on the pitch. Replace someone's on the bench. So I think Marcus, whilst he's not had enough minutes in his preferred position at 10, I think it's hard to overlook him.
He was great in the autumn as well. He has been great this season,
Tricky. I'm not sure there's going to be that many bolters. I'm not quite sure. It's interesting because we debate it every single week. Andy Farrell's not. He's not, he played well last week, not so well this week, so he's out. They're in and out of our team. But I think Andy Farrell now, I think he's known for a good while. Whilst he might extend the audition and a few names are penciled in, I think it's players working their way out of the team rather than making themselves into the team. He announced his coaching staff a week on Wednesday, which is really interesting. I think the conversation around the coaching staff, it feels, I reckon the last few Lions series, you've known, that feels really open. Maybe not in his mind, but from us on the outside, maybe not as obvious. Do you agree?
Yeah, there's not been any rumours either. Nothing kicking around, but I've certainly not heard anything. We don't know who they are. I think that's not a bad thing, though.
Yeah, I like Johnny Sexton in an Ireland tracksuit in Rome at the weekend. I wouldn't be surprised if he's got a role on tour.
I'd love Paul O'Connell to be proud of that dressing room. Oh, my God. I tell you, our boys would love him around.
Shawn Edwards.
Yeah, Paul's my captain, 09.
Yeah, what a guy.
Yeah, he's a good player.
Gents, he's all right.
Yeah, he went well. Gents, it's been a pleasure the last few weeks. That's it for the 2025 Men's Six Nations. Tom English, Gareth Rees-Owen and Chris Jones, they're going to be back Tuesday morning for the Nations Pod. Sam Walton, John Barclay, thanks so much for being here right across the Six Nations. Thank you for being here with us. Of course, you can listen to this on BBC Sounds. And if you want to see our pretty faces, we're on YouTube too. Welcome to 2025.